Hi there, my name is Madeline, and the topic of this podcast is California's Sustainable Public Transportation Initiative. In recent years, California has devoted funds and developed plans to expand its public transportation systems in a sustainable manner. This video will cover these plans as well as recent policies and laws that have been passed or attempted to pass in California related to sustainable public transportation. Some examples of such policies are Senate Bill 922, Senate Bill 288, and Proposition 30. The sustainability challenge this initiative attempts to address is high greenhouse gas emissions caused by gas-powered vehicle use. Gas-powered vehicles produce emissions, and these emissions are contributing to the historically high amounts of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, which is leading to climate change and global warming. There are many past development processes that have contributed to the sustainability problem of high greenhouse gas emissions. The idea of modernization theory and the stages of economic growth is one of the development theories that contributed to this problem. Rosto's stages of economic growth promoted modernity through investment in industrialization, which is a key contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. Neoliberalism and its promotion of a globalized economy is another development theory that contributed to the rise in greenhouse gas emissions. The idea of a globalized economy promotes industrialization as well, especially in developing countries. Neoliberalism also supports the idea of deregulation, which leads to increased industrial production with increased emissions as well as having few environmental protection laws. Neoliberalism also promotes a reduction of social spending, which means less money spent on things such as public transportation. This leads to an increase in personal vehicle use due to poor public transportation connections, and that leads to an increase in emissions as well. Less spending on public transportation also means outdated vehicles, which are known to emit more carbon than newer vehicles such as hybrids and all-electric vehicles. One key player in California's Sustainable Public Transportation Initiative is the California Department of Transportation, also known as Caltrans. Caltrans has developed 2 reports that outline how they plan on expanding public transportation in a sustainable manner that will best serve as many citizens as possible. These 2 outlines are the Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure, also known as CAPTI, and the Complete Streets Mission. The CAPTI reports strategies and actions that will, quote, advance more sustainable, equitable, and healthy modes of transportation, end quote, such as walking, biking, or taking a public bus or train. A main goal of CAPTI is to reduce congestion on the roads by offering alternative transportation. Caltrans plans to implement this goal by investing and expanding bus and rail systems, as well as placing transit-only lanes on highly congested roads as an incentive to get people to switch to public transportation by guaranteeing a shorter commute time. Caltrans aims to accelerate the funding cycles in order to put more money into rail systems. CAPTI also outlines Caltrans' plans to support rural communities by providing technical assistance when switching to sustainable transit methods. CAPTI lays out environmental protection and justice goals as well. For example, ensuring protections for natural and working lands, involving community voices by creating an environmental justice committee, and developing climate risk assessment guidance. All of these methods are ways of expanding public transportation in a sustainable way because they ensure that the development will have the least harm on the environment and the people. As mentioned earlier, another important mission related to the sustainable transportation in California is the Complete Streets mission created by Caltrans. The Complete Streets mission is the goal to ensure accessibility for pedestrians, cyclists, cars, and public transportation. This will be done by creating bike lanes, bus lanes, and sidewalks on every road in the state. The idea is that a complete street is one with a designated lane for every mode of transportation. This will make alternative forms of transportation safer in hopes that they will become more desirable. It also eliminates the idea of a car-centered society by showing that other, more sustainable forms of transportation are just as important as cars. There are 2 Senate bills that are important in relation to California's Sustainable Public Transportation Initiative, Senate Bill 288 and Senate Bill 922. SB 288 went into effect on January 1st, 2021, and ends on December 31st, 2022. The bill provides statutory exemptions for SECA requirements when it comes to developing sustainable transportation. SECA is the California Environmental Quality Act, And the main requirement is to inform decision makers and the public about the potential environmental impacts of proposed projects and to reduce the impacts as much as possible. SB 288 provides exemptions from SECA for projects that fall under 6 categories: pedestrian and bicycle facilities, customer information projects for transit options outside of cars, transit prioritization projects, development of bus-only lanes, new rail or rapid bus service on existing public rights-of-way, and charging or refueling infrastructure for zero-emissions vehicles. SB 922 extends the authority of SB 288 for 7 more years and adds a few more specifications and exemptions. However, the main idea remains the same, so I won't delve too deep into it. There are both pros and cons to SB 288 and SB 922. They are beneficial because SECA requirements can take a long time to complete, and allowing exemptions for sustainable transportation development means that it can be implemented quicker. This would greatly help California reach its zero emissions transportation by 2030 goals. However, a downside is that SECA is our main way of protecting the environment and protecting environmental injustice by informing the community of potential impacts these projects may have. Bypassing these requirements can potentially put the environment and vulnerable communities at greater risk if these laws and policies are used incorrectly and for the wrong reasons. Funding has been brought up multiple times in this video, and it is a source of disagreement and confusion when it comes to California's public transportation initiative. Proposition 30 was on the ballot this fall, and a part of its goal was to provide funding for the state's mission of switching to zero emissions vehicles by 2030. If passed, Prop 30 would have imposed a 1.75% tax on those who make over $2 million a year, with, quote, proceeds going towards incentives for electric vehicles, end quote. However, due to vocal opposition by Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom, it did not pass. This leads to questions about where the funding for all these ambitious projects and action plans will come from, and if it is feasible without an additional tax or increased budget. Prop 30's failure shows that while the state has made some great efforts to develop sustainable transportation, there is still controversy in relation to who should pay for these changes. It also shows how influential political leaders are in changing people's views when it comes to climate change and sustainability issues, because before Gavin Newsom voices opposition, the proposition was expected to pass. In conclusion, California and Caltrans are making some great and important efforts to develop and expand California's public transportation in a sustainable way. The CAPT is very thorough and adequate in addressing incentives for increased use of public transportation, as well as adjusting environmental safety and justice concerns. The Complete Streets mission is adequate in addressing the concerns of safety when it comes to alternate forms of transportation, as well as moving away from our car-dominated society. SB 288 and SB 922 do an excellent job of addressing timeline concerns and create a way to accelerate the state's sustainability mission. However, there are still limitations regarding funding sources for these initiatives, especially with the failure of Proposition 30. Nevertheless, the future of sustainable public transportation in California seems promising, and I hope to see more complete streets and expanded bus and rail systems in the future. I personally hope that they expand BART service, Bay Area Rapid Transit, to Solano County in the near future. Here is a list of the references I used to create this podcast. Thank you for listening to this podcast analysis on California's Sustainable Public Transportation Initiative.